Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
I had to find something to do because I was so in my head, or else I was going to lose my mind. And my son, one time I thought about getting a job, like, I was, talking to my husband and saying like, well, I was thinking about getting a job. And so then my son all of a sudden pipes up. He goes, "You can't get a job." He goes, "Well, you can get a mommy's job." And I was like, what is a mommy's job? A mommy's job turns out to be like, he says like, well, you have to take me to school, pick me up, take me to see my friends, let me stay in daycare to play with my friends. Don't let me be the last kid picked up, all these things. And I was thinking to myself, that's what I do now. So I did not go outside the home and get a job. I stayed with him, which was the best thing ever.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA. I am here with Debbie Dullabaun. Debbie, I got you, finally.
I know, finally, it's great. We did it.
Months and months and months, but here you are. Okay, so will you tell me a little bit about who you are, how you're raised?
I was raised by my grandparents. We're from the South, from Arkansas. I moved here with them to California when I was 4, and then I lived with them and went to, all the primary schooling. I stayed with them until I moved with my mother back to Texas when I was 15. Yuck.
Ooh, 15, that's a tough age.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how did that come about? Why did you suddenly go with your mom?
I was not aware that I was going to be going until the day I was going. So I was not a part of the discussion.
They didn't tell you until the day you were actually leaving?
Yes, that's when I found out I was going.
Wow, that probably wasn't good, right?
No, was not good. And I don't know, like I was really angry, and I've become more angrier as the older I've gotten, because then it's like processing it. But
I know that
was
happens.
angry.
I know.
Yes.
It's like you get to be like a certain age and you're angry about everything that happened to you when you were little, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I should be angry about this. I remember when this was, I was really upset. So it was a really big change for me. My mother lives in a small town. It's called Texarkana, Texas. It's the border of Texas and Arkansas.
Yeah, it's like Nowheresville, if I recall.
Yes.
I've driven through it. Yeah.
Yes. So it was, and especially at that time, it was really like Nowheresville. When you compare to, you live in Los Angeles and everything is around you. I had no friends, and there was just a whole different culture. So diversity was not inclusive then.
I bet.
As much as they would like to say. So
yeah,
it was just, it was a game changer for me. But as I look back, I remember a lot of things I learned. So, hindsight is really 2020, but that doesn't mean I like it.
Right. So when you say a lot of things you learned, you mean about how to adjust, how to adapt, how to roll with stuff?
Yes, just how to fit in, and then also how to speak up for myself, because the school had just recently been, because it's such a small town, been integrated. So this is in the 70s, late 70s. And it was just a whole culture that I was not used to living in Los Angeles. Everybody was free, spoke to one another. People didn't matter like what race and things. And my family is diverse, so I was used to different ethnicities, cultures in our house. So it was just like this culture shock. But like I said, looking back, I learned a lot.
Right. So then, would you spend summers with your grandparents, or come back for holidays? What did you do?
Every spring break, Easter break, Thanksgiving, Christmas, especially summers, I spent with my grandparents. It was just, there was nothing really to do. And sports is king in Texas, and football is king. So unless you played like some sport, and mostly sports were geared toward guys. So there you are left out. So,
Yeah.
it made me like I will never move to Texas.
Yeah.
And I felt that way when I was a kid. That has nothing to do with today's climate. That was my then. Like I'll never live here. Like I called it a rest home. Like if you are an older person and you want to go back and retire, great. I'll never retire there.
Mm. So you have a very diverse background. You've got an accounting background, clinical psychology. You volunteered with the Red Cross. You trained with the FBI. Can you talk to me a little bit about all those things that you did?
Well, I've been married for 33 years. When we had our first child, I became a stay-at-home mom, and I thought I was going to want to go back to work, but I didn't. Like staying at home with my son was just like the best thing ever.
Mm.
Unfortunately, tragically, my son died when he was 6 years old.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And needless to say, my world has been turned upside down, inside out, however you want to say it. I had to find something to do because I was so in my head, or else I was going to lose my mind. And my son, one time I thought about getting a job, like, I was, talking to my husband and saying like, well, I was thinking about getting a job. And so then my son all of a sudden pipes up. He goes, you can't get a job. He goes, well, you can get a mommy's job. And I was like, what is a mommy's job? A mommy's job turns out to be like, he says like, well, you have to take me to school, pick me up, take me to see my friends, let me stay in daycare to play with my friends. Don't let me be the last kid picked up, all these things. And I was thinking to myself, that's what I do now. So I did not go outside the home and get a job. I stayed with him, which was the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
After he passed, like I said, I had to find something to do and get out of my head because I was at home and missing him tremendously because he and I spent the bulk of our time here after he came home from school or, whatever. So I decided to start volunteering at the Red Cross. And because I felt like when my son passed, I felt like my IQ dropped like, 900 points. So I thought like, well, I can at least go to the American Red Cross and I can like answer phones. I can't really screw that up. So that's where I started, like, answering the phones. And I started 2 days a week, like 4 hours a day. Like, okay, that's all I would do. It's like, I'm not doing anything else, answering the phones. And I started doing like some data entry and stuff, just something really light that took no mind or thought. And then things progressed. The American Red Cross does tons of training. So we did training. So they started to reach out and they wanted to train organizations. Like, so if there's a big fire, earthquake or something that have all these, partnering, they would partner with organizations. So we got a chance to go into the FBI building, which was like totally, it was like, they took, it was like, you can't have a camera. I'm like, well, my phone's got a camera. And it's like, you put it in this thing, you can get it when you come out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
So
it's kind of intimidating, right? When you go
yeah,
into that situation. Yeah.
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 So we go in and we talk to them and, train them about becoming partners and then like just having them trained so that if we have like a large scale disaster, they would be a partner and be up and ready and running to go. So that was really interesting. And so they've done it with other partnerships. So I don't know, like if you ever pass by a high school or in any place, you see a pod, like one of those pod buildings, and it says American Red Cross.
Yeah, I've
Well,
seen that. Mm-hmm.
that means that if a disaster happens, that location is ready. all the supplies they need are in that pod, and they open up and make a shelter or, feeding place, wherever it is. So that is a really great thing. And I love the American Red Cross. I know some people from back in the war hate American Red Cross. I love it because it's volunteer based, and you cannot control when a disaster happens. So when you are on duty and you have a duty rotation, and your duty lasts for a week, and this is just a regular week, not a large scale disaster, because things happen all the time: house fires, apartment fires, lots of things. And the fire department always calls the Red Cross when there are people that are being displaced. So, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're asleep and you get the call, and you've got to roll out from your house like within 30 minutes, because you've got to be at a certain place to meet your team, park your car, and then get into like the van and head out to where you're going.
Right. So you were on board with that. So you went from just answering phones and having a very
Yes.
low commitment to getting totally immersed in it, and really
Yes.
so that you're answering for emergencies in the middle of the night.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
And that just went on for a while. And one day a lady came in and she was looking for help. And she spoke Spanish, and my Spanish is like, un poquito. And she was like saying she needed help. And I was thinking like, well, where do you live? Trying to find out if something happened at the home. Well, she was eventually able to state to me that her husband was abusing her. And so I said, well, that's not a part of Red Cross, but the city prints out, they used to print out, I'm not sure if they still do, these little resource cards. And on there was domestic violence. And I gave her the card and showed her the number to call. And for some reason, I stuck one in my pocket. I thought like, I wonder if they, need any help. I kept calling, trying to get into class. Every time I called to get in class was full. Because students that are working on their undergrad or grad degree in social work, psychology, even their doctorate, they take the classes because the state of California requires you to have 40 hours of training just to start your domestic abuse work.
I didn't know that.
And then,
Wow.
yeah, it's mandatory. And then once you go to whatever program you go, then there's continuing training. So I guess because I was like really persistent, the trainer finally said like, look, I'm just going to put you in for the next class. So finally I got in and started, and it's called DART, Domestic Abuse Response Team, and it's a partnership with LAPD. So there is a specially trained officer who answers domestic violence calls. And so I'm an advocate and I'm a civilian in the car with my officer, and I have a trainee also. And we hear all calls coming out on the MDT, the radio. So we respond to all domestic violence calls.
Wow, that must have been something. Wasn't that scary or horrifying often, or what?
It was scary, horrifying, and also like, like, wow, this is a whole different thing, because you're going into people's homes. I know that there's a lot of issues so I want to just clarify this, that people have with the police officers. I never had a problem with police officers. I never saw anything, and I had a dedicated officer that always with. And the officers, while we were out in the field, have always been very protective of us because we're civilians, very protective of us, and kept us safe. And we do our job. So it is a wonderful partnership, and it's almost like you're an insider to LAPD, but you're not an officer, but you just see the workings and you learn what the laws are pertaining to things. When you're like, well, why do you do such and such, and just the different laws. So it's really unfortunately very needed program, but it's really a great experience, but it's a lot of work.
Right, but you're not afraid of work because you love
No.
training, you love exposure. You've said it's all an amazing process, and I remember you also said it's important to be aware.
It is. You just can't be in your own little bubble. For me, first of all, it's boring being in my own bubble all the time. And the world is a huge place. So there's just so much going on. And you just don't want to walk around not knowing what's going on and not being able to give back. It's always fine because there's always a need for something, no matter what, there's always a need for something. I mean, you and I met with CASA. and we're always shorthanded. We're, just there's always more that can be done. There's always a great need.
Always
So,
more. Yep, always more can
yeah.
be done. So how did you come about getting involved with CASA?
CASA came about because in domestic violence, my organization is called the Domestic Abuse Center, which is where I work out of. And so there's so much work with children. We as advocates, we testify, we do restraining orders. So there's certain things. So, and I would see kids all the time. And I'm not a therapist. My major once upon a time in college was clinical psychology. And because I had to take anatomy and physiology, I was like, bump this, I'm going over to accounting. However, I made a full circle and come back into the area. So I appreciate social workers, psychologists, and all that field as well. So just thinking about the kids, like what happens, DCFS is called in, that whole thing, and as domestic violence advocates, we have a protocol that we have to follow. So CASA, I forget now where particularly, but I mean, I'd always hear about it like in court, CASA. And I was like, what is CASA? Like. And it's like, advocates for children. And so it's just like, oh, okay, I think that's pretty interesting because it gives a whole other level of like what happens to children. So I decided to start there. Like, okay, I'm going to get involved in CASA. I took the training class, and actually, my class was the last class right before COVID. So like February 20 something. February 2020 is like when our class ended. We, were sworn in, and then COVID. I got a chance to go to court in person for like one or two times, and then after that, COVID hit, so everything's been online.
Yeah, everything's been online. All the training, all the court, everything's taking a lot longer as well because of that, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you decided to take the deep dive, as my boyfriend says, and become a CASA. And you have a sibling set, right?
I have a sibling set, and I also then have another CASA kid.
Wow, 3? That's unusual,
Yes.
right?
Well, it is unusual. And because I had the sibling set and the siblings were separated, one of my siblings kind of AWOL'd from her program. So therefore, I only had one. And I was just kind of like, the one is in a stable home and stuff. So it's kind of like, I have some extra time. And, there are more kids waiting for CASA advocates.
Yeah, there's a waiting list, and I want people to hear that out there. There's a waiting
Yes.
list for CASAs.
Yes. So if you have the time, you love children, you want to see a whole other world and a whole other system that operates, do become a CASA. Get involved. You'll never regret the experience getting involved. You'll never regret
I
it.
think it's really true what you're saying. I agree. The same. You said nothing is ever like what it seems on paper. Can you tell me about that?
Well, you read it and you see like this is what it's going to be, because that's what it says on paper. And that paper should be lit on fire, because just as humans, things we change, evolve, children, that are been involved in trauma and such, like there's just changes constantly. So what you get on paper is great, and hopefully it'll stay that way, but it's never going to, it doesn't stay that way. And in my case, it did not stay that way. It's just, it's not devious. It's just that, as humans, we don't walk a straight line. We always want to like, okay, I'll take another route home. I'll just go exploring. And that's just the behavior. Like, so things are constantly changing with children. So the paper kind of gives you like a little guidance, but it's not going to like, stay that way, because we as people don't stay one way.
Yeah, and I don't know if this happened to you, but I actually found when I went through the court records for my CASA kid, a lot of the information was flat out wrong.
Yes.
It was just even like people's names, they would change on the one page. There would be 3 different names for the same person. Nobody had the name right. And
Yeah.
and really part of the work that I had to do at the beginning was just to figure out what was actually going on,
Yes.
because there was
Yeah.
so much misinformation.
Yeah. I double check like with my kiddos, like their names and spellings, their date of births. I also check with their attorney, like to make sure everything was matching. Like, okay, so here's the name and the correct spelling, because I want to pronounce and spell someone's name correctly. So I made sure like birth dates and all of that was correct. then just going through their history and finding out like these things don't match. I've made a point to, which is an interesting thing. I'm involved in like all of their meetings and such, and I make a point to almost my notes are almost overly explaining because I always think if I'm not here and someone else has to come in, I don't want them to have to go digging and finding out, what's true and what's correct and where do we stand. So, and I always think like that. If something happens to me, and I don't mean something bad, just like, if I'm going on a like world cruise, that would be great.
Yeah.
If I'm going, then someone else can like pick up and not have to wonder like what is going on, what does she do or whatever. So, and it's only fair to the kiddos that we serve that we do the best we can and provide correct information for them.
Yes, yes. Have you found, because you were right at COVID, did you have trouble establishing rapport with the kids?
Yeah, because they started going to school online. So everything's this virtual thing for them. And it's like, that's, fun because human contact is great. And we as adults crave human contact. We like to go out with our friends and, have coffee or such. So imagine a young kid meeting you and they're meeting you online and you're supposed to be their CASA and this person for them. And it's like, well, I don't even know you. So it's like the screen is the barrier, but by the same token is that the screen was like a great thing because we still got a chance to do our jobs. We just had to find different ways around it. I can only imagine what other CASA advocates, how inventive they got to make things work so that they could keep up with their kiddos because I didn't get to meet them for over a year because of COVID. So it was just really difficult getting a relationship going. And when you're in a room with a person, you can kind of like, you can feel their empathy or, like you can feel like they really care, but you got to make that feeling happen through the screen. And with a kid, so that's even more difficult because a kid is not, you're a stranger.
Yes.
And kids are told, don't trust strangers.
And also these kids often have so many adults in their lives that are just there telling them what to do or where to go or how things are supposed to be. So even just trying to communicate that you're there for them,
Yes.
it takes a while to convince them.
Yeah, they are like, well, just, and I say like just me, like I have a new kid and convincing him that I am here for him, not the parents, but for him. And we have not spoken yet. We've like I text him every day because he requested a CASA.
Oh, he did?
So I finally,
Oh, great.
yes,
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
yes. So I finally got assigned to him. And so he has not wanted to speak with me. I mean, just Monday, we finally like text and, he finally responded to my text. So I would send him a text message every day and say like, I hope you're having a good day. And, hey, I'm here for you. Like just sending that, like, I hope school is good today or like a sunny day. And finally I decided to say, I am here for you, but I don't want to push myself off on you. This is what you asked for as a CASA. And before you turn me away, I hope that we can get a chance to meet and just talk about what a CASA does. So he finally responded and said, I'll call you. Now, he hasn't called me, but I take that as positive. Like, he didn't call me on Monday. And then I sent another text just saying, hopefully today is a good day. And he apologized. I forgot to call you. So I'm taking that as like typical teenage behavior since he is responding. So I'm just trying to work in and keep saying, hey, give me a call. I'm available until like 9 o'clock at night. If you can use your phone, call me. So I'm just waiting and like kind of like biding my time. So
Yeah, it's
to try and get in there.
Yeah, it's a fine line that we have to tread because we want the kids to know we're there for them, but we can't just like push ourselves on them because that doesn't work.
Yes.
It's like, if they don't meet you halfway, there's not a whole lot you can do except hope that they will come to it.
Yes. So that's a good part about cell phones, which you can kind of like communicate and like have a good day and hopefully we'll meet. I just want to be there for you. I want to hear whatever you want to tell me.
This sounds so nice. I want you as my CASA. Get these like affirmations all day long. They would be like one a day. That's great.
Yeah. So it's just, I'm hoping, he'll come around. But I also, once I meet my kiddos, I'm always clear about I'm never going to lie to you. I'm always going to be honest. You may not like the truth, but I'm never going to lie to you so that we can just start off on a good note of knowing that I am at least going to be honest with them. And sometimes my honesty is, and I'll say to them is, I don't know. And that's an honest answer that I'll have to find out. But I don't know is a legit answer. It's not me putting you off like I don't know, but I'll find out. But I'm being honest with you. So
Right. And your older girl, she really tested you at first, right? She really pushed and pushed and pushed. What happened there?
she's still pushing.
She's
Yeah,
still pushing.
she went AWOL,
Oh,
which like she left her home.
like she
She
just
was
like took off, right?
just took off. Yes,
Like it,
just
right.
ran away.
And you didn't hear from her for weeks or months or what?
Months from Thanksgiving until the month of February, like
Wow.
right around Valentine's Day. So
What was she doing? What was she doing, you think?
she was just the street has a calling, and for people that think that these aren't things I'm saying about her, but I'm just saying that for people that think that gangs and sex trafficking and things for minors, for the people to think that it's not real, it's so real. And it's just that when you're a minor, it's so easy to fool kids and suck them in and, get them into, whatever. So she was just out in the street. I was really worried about her. I prayed, like, please, and she finally showed back up. She got into a new place, whatever. And
Right, so she's safe now. She's she's in a
she was, she ran away again.
Oh no.
So it's just like part of the CASA life. Not that it's great, like great, because you just, like it's when you said testing and pushing the boundaries, everything is like a test and a boundary pushing. It's like, trying to be there for that person. So, I always say, like, you can call me anytime. I will always reach out. I ensure that I have a great relationship with her social worker so that I can reach out and say, hey, I've heard from, Joan, fictitious name, and you can pick her up at this place. Because that's one of the things as CASAs we're prohibited of doing is going out to pick them up, especially when they've run away.
That's right.
It's
That's
for our
right.
safety. So I understand that.
Can you tell me a little bit about CSEC, because you're pretty familiar with that. I'm not, and I don't think our listeners are as well.
I am learning my way through, which I didn't know anything about CSEC.
Right. It stands for commercially sexually exploited
Sexually exploited
children.
children. And I am learning, that there is a separate court. They have their own judge. It's a whole different thing. I'm just learning that, like, okay, when you become a CASA, you almost get a hold of the college education,
I
the things
agree.
you learn.
I totally agree. Yep.
I never knew there was a CSEC court. I never knew anything about, even when I started with CASA wraparound teams, the acronyms IFCCS, all these things that, meeting multidisciplinary teams, meeting for the kids, a sexually CSEC advocate that works with the child as well. So I'm learning my way in that court, in that whole field. Saving innocence is just, just learning all about meeting and really seeing people are there for the children, like trying to make things work. And from my point of view, we as CASAs, we have a lot of information and we have relationships with children, with our kiddos, that we can help others form a relationship. When people ask me about my kiddo, and that's one of the things I tell them is like, is this something that if anybody asks me about, I can repeat? Because I want to make sure, and she or they will say yes or no. And so if a question comes up, it's like, okay, well, she gave me permission that I could tell you that she likes ice cream or he likes, whatever. So as CASAs, I find that we have more information, things that they will say like, no, I don't want anyone to know this. So you're sitting there like, I really want to tell this, but I can't break that confidence because they said no. And I haven't had a reason to break confidence yet, so which I'm glad because I don't like breaking confidence. But I also say to my kiddos, I will break confidence if you tell me something that's going to be a danger to yourself or you're going to harm others. But I will tell you first that I'm going to have to break confidence. So what can we do to keep you from doing this harm to yourself or harm to others so that I won't have to break confidence? And I've had that conversation with the kiddo, like saying, I don't want to. So if you're going to do this, I'm going to have to break confidence and I'd rather not. It worked that one time. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. It's like, okay, great. I've not had to use it again because I've not been given that chance.
Yeah. So your older girl, she's off again. Do you
Yes.
have any idea if she's okay? Like, are you seeing her on socials, or is there any way to track if she's all right?
Well, I spoke to someone that said they saw her on a social media platform someplace, and it was not a positive place that they saw her on.
Wow.
So I checked around on social media and I saw, and it's not positive. So
I
that
see.
is something that I've shared with her other advocate, letting
Mm-hmm.
him know this is what I found out because this is social media. So this is, an open book.
Yeah, open book. That's right. That's right.
So I shared this, like, hey, watch this. I'm not a big social media person because, as CASAs, do we really have time for like a lot of social
No,
media?
we do not. No,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, especially because I just want to rest my mind sometimes.
Yes.
Right.
So I passed along the information to say, hey, keep an eye out here. Just look at this page and just so we can both be on the same page. Just like, we keep each other informed, which I like about the team. And CSEC I'm working with, and prior to CSEC, like sharing of information, like, hey, if they've run off and they come back, getting the call to say they're back. And once they're back, I try and get out to visit them as soon as possible. Since we as CASAs have, we can see our kiddos, that's our right, their
Mm-hmm.
right to have us see them.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and get out there and see as soon as possible.
Let me ask you, do you remember a positive impact even one person had on you as a youth that pulled you through? I think you mentioned something to me, and I want to hear about that.
There's just a lot.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
But see, that's also from, hindsight, looking back. I had a teacher, which is, when I was in the fourth grade, and her name was Mrs. Robinson, and I thought she was the most beautiful, elegant woman in the world. She made every person in her class feel that way. I still remember this after, this has been eons. There was no calling each other playful names or anything like. She made every person feel that way, and she found something about everyone to say something positive to. Now, at the time, I did not realize how great that was. But looking back, it's like, walking to school and go like, I don't have the new shoes that somebody else has or whatever. And she could look at those shoes and goes, I really like those shoes. I think I'll get a pair and wear on the weekends. And so she made a really big influence on me. My high school principal, when I was in Texas high school, he happened to be, which was amazing, a black man, African American man. His name was Dan Haskins. He passed a couple of years ago, but he was in tune with all of us. And he was so in tune that he knew that I was out of my element, that I was in culture shock. And he always talked to me, always like held my hand because people don't understand when you move from a place like Los Angeles or New York or someplace that's smaller, there is no just adapting because it's like there's nothing to adapt to here. It's not here. So
Right,
just,
right.
just trying to walk that journey. He was that person. Like I could talk to him about anything, my bad day, about I hated my teachers. I thought my teachers hated me. He was just really great. My other person is the executive director of the Domestic Abuse Center, Gail Pincus. She has shifted my life so that I can't even describe the things she's done. She is a professional. She testifies at a lot of domestic violence trials. She does a lot of trainings. And she has just turned my life upside down in the most positive way. I mean, if she were an attorney, she would be going to the Supreme Court because when she is in your corner and like gathering information, there's just no way you can lose and just helping people. And I mean, she's traveled to Israel to help set up domestic violence protocols and such. She's just turned my life upside down in a positive way when like, minutia happens in government, like when payments aren't coming through. Here's a person who takes out a loan on her house so she can pay her employees until money
Wow.
gets through, so that, and so that they can keep working and helping people. Like, she never wanted to shut down that fountain of help. And she's a friend, but she is just amazing, and she is a wealth of knowledge. And watching her and watching people call on her and seeing her in court testifying and explaining about how domestic violence works and how you get caught up, and people say, why don't you just leave? And she explains how it doesn't work. It is just beyond amazing. When I first started my training class in CASA, she has a very unique, she drives a van because she just likes to drive a minivan. It has a certain bumper, it has a bumper sticker on. So you just know the van. So I pull in the parking lot to go to my training class, and I see it. I'm like, okay, that's Gail's car. I text her and say, hey, I see your car here at the courthouse. She's inside. She's talking to a judge about some kid there that she's going to testify. This judge called her to testify. And I was just like, I can't get away from you. Like, here I am over CASA, and here you are. I mean, because she is everywhere. So it's just like part of her thing is just service, and she does it so well. If I could ever be like a pinky finger of her, I don't know if my head would swell up or not, because I tell you, she's just very helpful. And so I'm part of the death review team with domestic violence.
What is that? What is that?
It is where in domestic violence a murder has happened. And so just different agencies together viewing that situation and wondering what we could do differently to prevent it from happening again. Like, what resources should we have in place? If it's culture, like language, or just education. Some people still don't know what domestic violence is, and it may not even translate it well in other languages. So just continuously looking at, like, how did this happen? What could we have done better? What could we have done to, stop this or to get this person help? So it's just, I got to join a group of dedicated people that look at this, and it's very, very confidential. So I can't talk about
No,
anything
that's all
about
good.
it.
Yep, yep. I
But it's
didn't
just,
realize anything like that actually existed, and that's
I
fantastic, right?
yeah, neither did I. And that's what happens when you start getting involved in service. You find these things like, I didn't even know this was here. Why isn't this not publicized, but more, these type of things more widely known? Like, when I say I'm a CASA, like, what's a CASA? And I'm like, really?
Mm.
You don't know what a CASA is? And it's like, have to like explain this. And then I'm like, I'll say, like, and I know you have free time. You could be a CASA.
Okay, so what I think is really great about hearing you speak about all of this, Debbie, is that you took your grief and turned it into service. That's
Yes.
what you've done, huh?
Yeah. Because, like I said, being in my head 24/7 just wasn't the place I want to be all the time.
But it's also, it's quite honorable. Sounds like it's almost honoring your son as well.
It is. It's the mommy's job that I now have that my son said I could get. It is to make him proud. You know how the police come out to schools and, talk to little kids. And so he told us, and I live by this, we always have to help the people. So I live by that. My husband and I, we live by that. We always have to help the people. You just cannot live here on this earth and not help people. I don't know how one does it without lending a hand. I received so much help, and I still do in my grief journey. I was part of, and still am, part of the Compassionate Friends. It is it's an organization for parents, grandparents, or siblings who've experienced the death of a child, a grandchild, or a brother or sister. It's an organization that no one knows about, basically, until they need it. I never knew
Yeah, I've
about
never
it.
heard about it. No, I've never heard about it. I could have used it.
It's been around 50 years. It's international. They have over 600 chapters within the United States, even in Puerto Rico and other areas. Right now, this week, there is a regional conference going on in Hawaii. My schedule just didn't jive for me to go, because I would have loved going to Hawaii. But they hold conferences every year, once a year. They've been virtual for the past couple of years, but they're going to have one in Houston coming up in July. And typically the attendance is 1,500 and up. Workshops, it lasts 3 days. It's just an amazing organization.
Yeah,
I
it sounds
was
it.
fortunate
Yeah.
enough to be the president of the board of directors. It's just, it's people, once again, helping people. It's a volunteer-based organization, but people giving back and reaching out and taking someone's hand. And someone took my hand to save my sanity. And I hope that in my journey on this earth that I can help point someone in the right direction, give a kind word or, just something because there's so much pain that, we walk around in, and especially children. Children walk around with so much pain. And it really bothers my spirit to know that um, when I started CASA, I said to them, like, when did we get to like where it was okay for children to be just thrown away, like
Mm.
living on the street, no resources, no help? Why is that okay with us? That these children, people say it's not my problem. I mean, the kids that we help in CASA, they don't know our lives. I mean, they're not our next door neighbors, but it is our responsibility to not let them just fall away by the wayside. And you know that as part of being CASA, that,
Yeah, I agree.
you
I
know,
agree.
we have our own families, but there is still room for us to do something for someone else outside. So like CASA advocates, any advocate is great. I think it's great. But CASA advocates just have something else like, just really great because I know the time. And even though it says like, okay, you're to spend like a minimum of 10 hours per month, I know the time that CASA's put in. No one does 10 hours a month
No.
because you just want to, you keep going and you want to help and try and make things as right for that child that you can. So hopefully they can turn around and look back and reach out their hand and help someone else. So, um,
Yeah, yeah. I love that idea,
yeah.
Debbie.
So
Let me,
CASA is the reason we met. So yay.
yay, yay. I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests, and I want you to dig deep if you can.
Mhm.
What is the one thing about you that no one would ever know unless you told them?
No one knows that I am actually shy and I'm a loner, except that really like my dad, just certain people's like I'm a loner. I can spend days alone. Like, my husband travels some, but I can spend, like, when he's gone out of town, I can spend the whole time in my house and not talk to anyone outside of work. And I love it. I'm not like, I don't crave company. I love being alone. It's like me, I'm really good company for myself. And then when I get when I get sick of myself, I pick up a book or I go out. It's like, okay, so I'm sick of you, so let me go out. But no one knows that I'm really a loner because they think like, well, you're always busy, you got something to
Yeah,
do. But I'm a loner. I have
right.
friends, but I'm a
Mm-hmm.
loner.
Yeah, but you're also super gregarious, it seems, and affable and very friendly and very almost sometimes chatty, I'd say.
Hmm.
But actually, you're a loner.
I'm a loner. I typically like, and I won't say that I don't do it, but girlfriends typically go shopping together. I don't. I go
No, I
alone.
don't do that.
I
I
go
don't do that.
alone. I go out to eat a lot by myself. Not because I don't have anyone, but it's like I'm just a loner.
You just like being alone with yourself.
Yeah, I'm just a loner. And
That's cool.
it's like, but most people don't know that because they think like, well, how could you be a loner because you're in casa and all
Yeah,
these
you're
things,
doing
but
this, you're doing that, you're
mhm,
doing this, you're doing that.
but I'm a loner.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to say to people listening, Debbie?
Be of service, and I'm probably going to mess up this quote, and it's one of my favorite. I saw it on the wall in biology, and whether you're politics or whatever, but it's Ronald Reagan said that the world cannot run without volunteers, and it's the truth. You've got paid, whatever, but the world just cannot run without volunteers. And so, yes, I'm messing up the quote. I'm not quoting it exactly, but that is what he said. No matter how big the government gets, without volunteers, it doesn't work. And it's the
That's right.
truth. CASA
Yeah.
is volunteer based. It's like, I'm not saying that there aren't paid employees, but it's volunteer based. And the world just can't run without it. And we need more. People need a helping hand. And if you think of yourself as a wounded person, you can't help anyone. You're not, because I'm as wounded as you can get. I've got scars, battle scars all over. but I still had something to offer. And Gail Pincus taught me that. She told me I still had something to offer, even after being with Red Cross and whatever, but I've been a domestic violence victims advocate for 20 plus years.
Wow.
You have something to offer no matter what your wounds are, what you've been through. You've got something to offer, and don't be ashamed or afraid to share it and think you're not good enough. Because that's when you think you're not good enough, that's when you really need it. So give a helping hand.
Give a helping hand. Thank you.
If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.